This video is brought to you by AMD. Welcome back everybody to another episode of Direct Comparison. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the recently released Gears 5 and seeing how it compares both visually and from a gameplay perspective to the Coalition's previous entry, Gears of War 4. For this comparison, I'll be running both games on the PC with the settings pushed as high as possible at a 1440p resolution, and in order to improve the clarity of the image, the motion blur settings will be disabled in both games. Alright, so to kick this comparison off, let's take a look at some of the character models, starting with Gears of War 4's protagonist, James Phoenix. JD appears to have received a brand new set of armor in Gears 5 that seems to resemble the style of the armor from the original games, with a higher backplate that forces the character to hunch forward slightly. It doesn't look very comfortable, but it does resemble that classic bulky Gears of War style more. The actual quality of this armor is a bit harder to judge, as textures appear nice and crisp in both games. However, JD's head on the other hand looks much more believable now, with more realistic shadowing and more visible individual hair strands. The iconic Lancer weapon, while seemingly identical, has also received a few minor changes, including a larger hollow sight and the removal of the magazine locking mechanism that appears near the trigger in Gears of War 4. JD's best friend Del has also seen a few changes. Again, his armor has been changed almost entirely, with some more detailed plating, complete with visible scratches on the surface, and a cool new shoulder strap with lots of blue LEDs. Other changes include a new green headband and slightly less aliasing at the expense of some clarity. And then of course, there's the new lead character, Kate, who has undergone a pretty major change in her outfit design, at least with her default multiplayer skin. Instead of the outsider clothing she wore in Gears of War 4, Kate now sports a full set of COG armor, and no longer is wearing her red beanie. Next, let's take a look at some environmental textures, mainly from one of the same multiplayer levels shared between both games called Reclaimed. This level provides some great examples of how things have changed, especially in terms of the quality and complexity of various objects and surfaces. The first thing I noticed when booting into this level was that the red tiles on the roof of the buildings now appear more decayed with ash and dust, rather than just appearing as a single solid color. Other changes are a bit more subtle. This pile of apples in the corner, for example, are virtually identical between both games. But because of the alterations made to the environmental shadows, they appear to have more definition now, and feel a bit more three-dimensional. Other surfaces, like the dirt ground, have also been improved, with much higher resolution textures than ever before. But strangely, this improvement can't be found everywhere. In fact, some textures look a bit worse now, like this wood fence, or the iron bolts on this wheel. After looking at several different surfaces and objects, it's difficult to really determine which looks better, as it seems to go back and forth. The lighting, on the other hand, has been improved a great deal with the latest game. Gears 5 appears to have much more contrast than its counterpart, providing a more colorful image, and significantly darker shadows. In this image, for example, Gears of War 4 looks washed out, and the structures in the distance feel as though they're all along the same plane. Gears 5's improved global illumination, however, helps to give the scene more depth and color. Now, whether or not you like having more colors in a Gears of War game is more up to personal preference. But based on the direction of the Coalition's latest entries, it does seem that the increased color variation is the intended style that the artist is going for, and the much darker shadows greatly improve the more tense and horror-oriented moments throughout the campaign. Shadows in general just appear darker in Gears 5, and are much more noticeable, especially when defining smaller environmental detail. However, at the same time, the quality of the shadows themselves don't appear as good as before. This fence, for example, used to cast a more believable soft shadow, but the very same shadow in Gears 5 appears too sharp, almost as if it's being affected by a light source directly nearby. The character shadows also appear a bit less detailed, as small things like the crosshair from the Lancer's scope are no longer visible. Now, let's take a look at a few effects, starting with ambient fire. Considering how often fire appears off to the side of various set pieces in both of these games, I was surprised by how pixelated and unrealistic they appeared when viewed up close. Gears 4's fire looks bad in practically every situation, but the ambient lighting and typical distance from these effects makes them barely noticeable under normal circumstances. Gears 5, on the other hand, does feature a few improvements here, with no more pixelation to the flames themselves. However, the fire still feels almost like a transparent video file was just dropped into the environment, and the animation for the flames feels like it's sped up a bit too much, though this is only the case with the ambient effects off to the side. Gears 5's incendiary grenades are a massive step up from the pathetic looking fire effects from the same grenades in Gears of War 4. The effects not only feature new ember particles, but the improved visibility of the effect also benefits the gameplay, making it easier for players to spot and avoid when moving around the arena. Explosive effects have also seen some improvements. Frag grenades, for example, used to feature a low-resolution fireball effect that was mostly masked by thick black smoke effects that would fade quickly after exploding. But Gears 5's fireballs look much more impressive, with high-resolution balls of fire surrounded by thick smoke that reacts properly to the effect's lighting, and even some nice sparks to help add to the overall presentation. The effect is still fairly quick and fades almost immediately, but it's impressive nonetheless. These improvements can also be found with things like the muzzle flash from firearms, with more exaggerated fire effects and excessive bloom to help make the weapons feel more powerful. But one of the most impressive new effects is the new dynamic ground tessellation, used to simulate realistic footprints in both sand and snow. This effect looks incredible, and can even be triggered by non-player controlled characters as well. Now, let's take a look at the biggest changes to the gameplay design across all the modes in both games, starting with the campaign. Gears 5, as I mentioned in my full review earlier this week, is designed to be much larger and more open-ended, with massive sprawling environments that the player can explore freely. Gears of War 4, on the other hand, is more linear, with the occasional defensive arena every now and again. Very rarely are players given a moment to relax, as practically every inch of the game world is designed for combat. Gears 5 still features plenty of combat, but there's now a lot more explorative filler in between. Gears 5 also introduces some light RPG-like elements into the experience, including health bars for stronger enemies and an ability upgrade tree. By collecting components hidden around the large environments and applying them to the floating robot Jack, players can activate special abilities like increased armor and invisibility to help in combat. Gears of War 4, however, doesn't have anything like this, and, like the older games, is based entirely around killing the enemies with any weapon you can find, without the help of special gadgets. Gears 5 also features some brand new firearms, including the LMG Claw, the Cryo Cannon, and the Breaker Mace. All the weapons from Gears of War 4 are still in Gears 5, and behave the same, though the Lancer now has a different button to rev up the chainsaw, which I'm still trying to get used to. This was done in order to incorporate the new melee attack in Gears 5, which allows players to swing a knife and even string melee attacks together when in a tight spot. Players can even stealthily take down a few enemies using their knife before combat encounters, adding a little bit more depth to the gameplay. New enemies in Gears 5 include the Swarm Phlox, more heavily armored soldiers like the Warden, and a new line of DB robots that are possessed by Swarm Leeches. These new enemy types even work in harmony together at times, like the possessed Guardians protecting the heavy Swarm Scions with shields. As far as enemy variety goes, Gears 5 is a noticeable step up, and provides a lot more interesting challenges to the player. The multiplayer has also seen several changes. For one, players can now play as the flying drone Jack in both campaign co-op and the survival horde mode. This character is designed mostly for beginners, though he does come with some special abilities, like a tool to possess enemy drones and control them directly. New to Gears 5's multiplayer suite is the escape mode, which throws players into a fairly basic maze-like environment and tasks them with reaching the finish line without being killed by hostile enemies or the poison gas chasing after them. The Horde mode is mostly the same as it was before, only now each chosen character has a unique ability that can be activated after a cooldown, similar to the unlockable abilities in the campaign. Power pylons have also been added, and will drop after defeating bosses to provide a chance to earn extra points towards purchasing defenses. And then of course there's the competitive multiplayer, that's seen its 2v2 Gnasher Shotgun mode removed. In its place is the new Arcade Deathmatch mode, that features character-specific abilities, min-match purchasable weapons, and an overall more accessible experience. On top of this, Gears 5's future multiplayer maps will be given to players for free, whereas each map in Gears of War 4 cost $5 to own and create lobbies with. In terms of gameplay, Gears 5 offers quite a few major shakeups to the formula, including a bigger scope for the campaign, new weapons, an emphasis on player abilities, and some new game modes. Finally, let's do a quick sound comparison. Which game do you think has the better overall sound design?
On track!
And that wraps up this episode of Direct Comparison. Overall, Gears 5 seems to feature plenty of improvements over its predecessor. While there are a few things that look noticeably worse, like the quality of environmental shadows and the occasional object texture, it's balanced out by improvements in other areas, like more detailed character models, far more impressive effects, and some great new gameplay features and modes. But what do you guys think? Do you like the changes made for Gears 5, or do you prefer Gears of War 4? Let me know in the comments section. Now, I'd like to take a moment to thank my sponsor for this project, AMD, for not only providing me early access to Gears 5, but also providing me with this amazing top-of-the-line AMD build, complete with the new 3900X 12-core 4.6 GHz CPU and the new Radeon 5700 XT, an awesome card built for 1440p gaming and powered by AMD's new RDNA architecture, all of which was used to record the PC gameplay footage for this video. If you want to learn more about AMD's new tech for this year, be sure to check out the link in the description. And if you are in the market for a new gaming PC and are interested in getting into the Gears franchise too, AMD and Microsoft have a great deal going on right now, where you'll get 3 months access to the Xbox Game Pass for PC, access to the upcoming Gears 5, and over 100 other games that can be downloaded directly to your PC and played today. If you want more details on that, be sure to check the description. If you want to learn more about Gears 5 and all the other games in the series, be sure to check out my full history of the Gears of War franchise linked at the end. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos posted every week.